You probably already know that the tone of your document will depend on your relationship with your audience. For example, when you make a request, remember that your success largely depends on how your audience responds. In doing so, you must adopt a tone that shows that you understand that the person you are addressing may refuse or agree to your request. But of course, that doesn't mean you have to be obsequious. In this example, you will see what is not a good example of how to get what you want. Here, Jack was too flattering. In this case, Sarah would rather refuse his request because Jack sounded very fake. But this option starts too abruptly and generally sounds more like a demand than a request. Now let's look at this version. As you can see, in this variation, the tone is friendly and respectful, without subservience. Agreeing to a request. Of course, there are nuances, situations, when you have to respond to a request. In such situations you are in a completely different position. You control the situation. But this does not mean that you can be rude or dismissive. As a normal person, you should always be polite to another person. Depending on whether you agree with him, or refuse him or her, you will choose your style, because every situation requires a different approach. But there is one unchanging rule. Say yes quickly and say no slowly. Let's consider the case where you agree to a request. If you agree with the request, then immediately say so. Because your goal is to make a good impression, so you need to do it as soon as possible. Moreover, this must also be done at the very beginning, preferably in the first paragraph, but certainly not later than the second. If you want to add any terms to your agreement, then they should appear later, so as not to spoil a good first impression. And if you are stingy or self-willed in this, then the effect of immediately reporting good news will be wasted. Because if you speak as if you are doing the other person a great favor or reluctantly agreeing to his request, then you will make a completely different, wrong impression. Try to let them know as if you're glad to be able to agree. In the following letter, you can see how these recommendations are applied in practice. Mark Robinson is informed, almost immediately by Jason Harris, that he has been granted a discount increase. It sounds as if he is pleased to be able to agree in such a graceful manner. Despite having to make a proviso, he leaves it until the end to take the sting out of it. Refusing a request. Denying a request requires a different approach. You need to gradually adapt the recipient of the letter to the refusal. It is necessary to express understanding of the problem of another person, explain what you went to find a way to solve this problem, explain the reason for the refusal, and after all this, say no. As with consent, your goal is to make the best impression. You need to make sure they at least understand your position before getting upset about your rejection. Again, your tone matters the most. And in this case, you cannot think, just because you are in control, you can be rude or impolite. Always be polite, even when you refuse someone something. It's not about good manners, it's about your best interests. When you refuse a subordinate, you should try to reduce the frustration, not demotivate them. And of course, you should always think about the image of your organization. For the same reason, you need to be more careful, and see if you can somehow soften the blow, give hope for the future. For example, you can simply say, "I'll contact you as soon as the situation changes." The email below can be an example of how to decline a discount increase request. As you can see, in this variant, it gradually adjusts to the rejection of the sender of the letter. He is polite, not rude, even a little sorry that he has to just say no, and offers the recipient of the letter the hope that if his company increases turnover, he will be given an additional discount. For more valuable content, subscribe our channel.